It is must-see TV. The Atlanta Falcons right now in the year of our Lord 2023 are must-see television. And I can say that confidently. I don't know when the last time you could say that confidently about the Falcons was, but it is absolutely true right now. Alrighty, welcome everybody back to another video here on the channel. If you don't know who I am by now, my name is David. I also go by Miller Football, and I'm currently doing a series here on this channel where I'm talking about all 32 NFL teams in depth with fans of each of the teams. And if it's not apparent by the Atlanta Hawks shirt to my right, we are going to be talking about the Atlanta Falcons today. And like I said, got to bring on fans for each of the teams, and we've got two great Falcons fans here joining me. To my right, we've got Hammy, and then below me, we've got Rydrell. So before we dive into this, start talking about the Falcons. How are you guys doing today?
I'm doing great, man. How about you?
I'm doing all right. I had some technical difficulties, obviously, but otherwise, I'm doing all right.
Yeah, it's going pretty good my way too. I got no complaints down here. How's everything going with you there, David?
Like I said, same boat. I'm doing pretty all right. Glad to just finally be getting this started, considering we're recording over an hour after when we were supposed to, which is my fault. But yeah, I'm just excited to talk about the Falcons. We were talking a little bit a couple minutes ago. I'm pretty excited to see what they're going to do this year. I've got some positive thoughts about them, unlike I did last year. I think, if I remember correctly, I was at least somewhat negative towards the Falcons last. Well, let's just say different viewpoint now, different outlook on the team. It's going to be much more positive this time around.
I mean, last year was a completely different scenario. So I mean, it's not like we can't knock it for something that wasn't real.
Yep.
So
and I to be fair, I wasn't far off. I mean, they picked what, 7th, so not fantastic.
Yeah. But considering what the NFC stuff was last year, and they were like a game out of first. So I mean, like all those teams last year was just horrible.
Yeah, it was a really, really bad division. That's a good segue into just looking at the record for the Falcons last year. They were 7-10, 4th in the AFC South, 6-3 at home, 1-7 on the road, and then 2-3 in their last 5 games. And I feel like the biggest talking point for the Falcons last year, at least amongst non-Falcons fans, was the usage of Kyle Pitts and kind of what happened with him after having the greatest rookie tight end season in the modern football era, second greatest all time, couldn't surpass good old Mike Ditka in receiving yards. But what were your thoughts on year 2 for Kyle Pitts? Do you think it was a him issue? Do you think it was a team issue, coaching issue? Like, what would you blame his disappointing sophomore season on, so to speak?
I'll let you go first, Rydrell.
Kyle Pitts was a Marcus Mariota problem this year. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. It's kind of hard to call the plays you really want to call for a tight end with his ability when you have a quarterback who does not trust his arm strength and who can't make certain throws. So, I mean, of course, the casual fans are going to like see it and just automatically like kind of pick stuff and just kind of nitpick without understanding what we see, like actually following the team. That was a Marcus Mariota problem. Because I hated he got hurt when Desmond Ridder finally took over, because I really feel he would have truly shown reminded people who he was, having a stronger arm quarterback and a quarterback who had in his arm getting him the ball. So yeah, last year was clearly a Marcus Mariota problem.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Mariota was just bad all around. Like, his passing ability wasn't it. And literally the Falcons, like, they could not trust Mariota. And going back to 2019, there was a reason why Mariota got benched for Tannehill. Now Arthur Smith doesn't trust him, and so after all, you play Mariota for a good amount of games. The moment Desmond Ridder came in, it wasn't just Kyle Pitts, but Drake London looked a lot better on the field when Desmond Ridder was throwing the football. So the fact that you put Ridder in and now you become a little bit leaning towards the passing game, like, that showed you a lot on how the Falcons felt about Marcus Mariota. So that just sums it up right there for you.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Mariota's a bad quarterback at this point in his career. I and there was a lot of drama with him last year too, when he kind of like left the team in the back half of the year and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But I agree. I don't just want to blame it on Mariota, though. As much as I love Arthur Smith, I do think a little bit of it was him as well, just because he wasn't using Kyle Pitts to his advantage, if that makes sense. Like, it's not like he was actively hurting Kyle Pitts or anything, but I feel like a player like that, you can get a lot more creative with, a lot more versatile, like splitting him out wide at receiver and not just like in the slot, but out wide at receiver and things like that. And there wasn't a lot of that. It was a lot of Kyle Pitts as a traditional inline tight end. He'd move a little bit. There were a lot of plays where he was asked to do a decent bit of blocking. And I know that was a result of a bad passing game and wanting to run the ball a lot more. But I do think Arthur Smith could have done a little bit more to put Pitts in a better advantage, a better place to succeed. And I think we'll see that this year. But yeah, I hardly blame any of it on Pitts. When he actually did get his opportunities, he made the most of them. And like Rydrell pointed out, people are going to look at it. They're going to try to spin narratives, call Pitts shitty. I know as a Bears fan, there's a lot of Bears fans out there that try to argue that Kyle Pitts isn't as good as Cole Kmet. And while I love the narrative because Kmet's my favorite player, that's just not true by any stretch of the imagination.
I am a Cole Kmet fan. Don't get me wrong. I was very pleased watching him as the year went on, how he progressed. But David,
sure.
I love you. And no.
No, I agree with you. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I mean, Kmet's a better blocker as a pass catcher and as a weapon. It's not close. There's no argument whatsoever. Yeah. You can look at the numbers. I don't care. Stats don't tell the full story. Stats lie to the naked eye. That's what I always say. I don't always say it, but I say it off camera. I want to start saying it on camera more. But if you sit down and you watch the film and you really look at what was happening with the Falcons last year, it's really hard to blame a lot of that on Pitts, or really any of it for that matter. So I think this year it'll make a big difference for him, especially, and we'll talk about the guys they added, but adding Jonnu Smith, I think, is going to be huge for that, because that's a tight end that you can actually trust to not only be a good, like, inline tight end, but he's got that H-back experience, so he's a really good blocker, and obviously has the familiarity with Arthur Smith. So I think that's going to make a big difference. I think we're going to see more of Kyle Pitts lined up out wide as a receiver, and he's going to be able to make the most of that. And also, I trust Ridder at this point a lot more than I trust Mariota, which, not to slight Ridder, but isn't really saying a lot, because there's a lot of quarterbacks in the league I trust more than Mariota right now. But kind of segueing out of that, my next question before we get into kind of like the nitty gritty and the numbers of the Falcons previous season, do you guys, what is your stance on Desmond Ridder right now? Like, is it too early to tell if he's going to be anything? Are you confident in him? Are you waiting to see, like, what are your thoughts with him right now?
I'll let you take that one first, Hammy.
All right. I feel like it's too early to tell. It was a little bit of a small sample size. I want to see a little bit more reps, but he did look solid when he was playing in. I felt like the offense was starting to improve a little bit more when Desmond Ridder was on there, but I just think, like, just a little bit of a small sample size. I feel like maybe if he gets more reps in, you'll probably may see some improvement, and then we can probably tell the full story of what Desmond Ridder actually is. And like I said, we probably will get into the moves, but he's set up. He's got some really good weapons with him that he can set up to probably take the next step. So I'm expecting a pretty solid season. I'm expecting Ridder to pick up at least where he left off last season. So I think he was just solid, but then again, too early to tell whether if he is the guy or not.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. 4 games is, like 4 games just, it isn't enough. And I did enjoy watching the progression, like from the New Orleans game, the Baltimore game, up until ultimately, the final, like the Tampa game, where he kind of looked like, it was really like the first time really in that stretch where he kind of looked like he was commanding the offensive line. He was commanding the line of scrimmage, like he had confidence where he wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
That one particular pass, I think a lot of people harped on it a lot. That one particular pass to Micro Pruitt, where he basically like fitted between like 2 guys on the line. It was just like, you could kind of see, you could see the progression coming. You could see the confidence coming. But yeah, 4 games is, it was still it was too small of a sample size, and just trying to really keep track of like the off season, kind of like I like what I'm hearing as far as them talking about him, like his leadership and him really starting to truly command the line of scrimmage more, like as the guy for that offense. So I think it is still too early to tell, but I like the direction where he's going. But it is still 4 games ain't enough. It's still way too early.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the objective take on Desmond Ritter right now. Like, there's a lot to get excited about. I really liked Ritter coming out of college. He was my QB 1 or 2. I can't remember at this point because I remember I had him and Malik Willis like neck and neck at 1 and 2. I can't remember who I ended up favoring in the end. But I really like Ritter. I'm excited to see what he's going to do this year. Like Hammy brought up, he's got a lot of the tools to succeed. Arthur Smith is one of the better offensive minds in football. He's got a good offensive line, good run game to rely on, good weapons. So it'll be exciting to see how he develops this year. But yeah, I think it's too early to say either way, whether he's good, whether he's bad. There's a lot of growth in the few games he did play. Definitely some signs of something really good. Just got to see if he can do that consistently and whatnot. Got to pull it together. But I'm very excited to watch Desmond Ritter develop and see what he can do for Atlanta this year. And if all else fails, you got Taylor Heineke, and he's got more plot armor than any player in the NFL. So he'll win games that you probably shouldn't win, and that'll do something for you. But that being said, jumping over to some of the numbers for the Falcons last year, specifically looking at EPA per play, something I've been looking at a lot in this series. They were 7th in rushing. No surprises there. Like I said, one of the better run games in football, and we will get into that, and I will nerd out when we get into that because it is something beautiful. 19th in passing EPA per play, 23rd in rush defense EPA per play, 29th in coverage. So defense wasn't really there. The passing game was a little below average. Not fantastic, but not bad. And then looking at points scored, also a good tell of where a team is at. 15th in total points scored with 365, 23rd in points allowed with 386, and then 20th in point differential. So looking at those numbers, is there anything that immediately jumps out to you and either, goes along with something you saw last year or even surprised you?
Honestly, I was, I don't know, what was the stat you said that was 19th?
19th in passing EPA per play. So kind of below average pass game.
I'm shocked it was that high.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
I'm shocked. It was that high. I figured they would have been like bottom. I figured they'd be like 8 in EPA as far as passing. I mean, it was just like they're. I don't want to say the passing game wasn't there. It wasn't necessarily non-existent, but it was just like you couldn't really. Arthur Smith, I think part of it was also he couldn't get creative how he may have wanted to just because he didn't trust the quarterback. So I just the 300 so it's just like when you hear 363 points scored as a team, knowing the kind of passing game you had, but being able to still put top half of the league points up. I mean, it's a to me that's a little bit of a testament to Arthur Smith and the fact that he was able to get what he good out of the
Yep.
offensive weapons that he had. I mean, it's a testament to him, and for him in 2 years to be able to get 2 7-10 seasons out of the rosters they've had. People are talking about he's on the hot seat. He's on the hot seat. No, he should be nowhere near the hot seat. He has done
He
so much
should.
with he shouldn't be nowhere near the hot seat. He's done so much with little talent. I'm happy to see what this team is going to do, knowing the front office actually they're kind of putting their chips in. They're wanting to see this team win, and I'm happy to see him with some talent for once in Atlanta. I want to see what he's capable of doing, having the players that I think we all feel can go out and actually do some things for him this season.
Yep. And they won games last year. And none of this would have happened without Arthur Smith. Like, everyone was expecting the Falcons to probably have, like, a top 5 pick in the draft, and, like, they thought their offense was gonna be putrid and horrible. No, Arthur like, the fact that passing, attack and the total point score also kinda shocked me too because nobody was really high on the Falcons last year, and they kinda surprised a lot of people, and I think at one point, they were leading the division with that roster Like, if that does not show you the type of coach that Arthur Smith is, I don't know what else that I have to point out. Like, the fact that that Falcons team was in talks for making the playoffs last year, like, that says a lot to how good of a coach Arthur Smith is.
They've
And
been
now
they've
you're
been
seeing that talent come together. Like, we're really going to see. I think this is what probably when NFL fans are going to realize how good and capable of a coach Arthur Smith is. So I really do think that seeing the strides that this team has made, even despite like nobody having that much expectations, and seeing what Arthur Smith has done with that, I can only imagine like how this current roster that he has right now is going to do under his leadership.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, Arthur Smith is one of the better offensive minds in football, and I would say one of the more underappreciated, coaches in the league as a whole. And I think, Hammy, you made a fantastic point. He was making something out of nothing last year, and the big, like, how do I want to put this? The big benefit, or not the big benefactor, the X factor in that situation, so to speak. The thing he leaned on the most was the rushing game, which was just absolutely beautiful, absolutely fantastic. And just kind of jumping over and talking about the offense as a whole, it was really interesting last year because it was very cut and dry. There wasn't a lot of fancy stuff going on. There wasn't a lot of misdirection. There wasn't a lot of getting cute. And it was very much just, we're going to run the ball. We're going to use the run. We're going to use the run to set up play action. And then we're going to run these long developing bootleg plays where somebody runs all the way towards the sideline and then fires something downfield. And it was very like Mike Shanahan-esque, right? That's kind of the vibe it gave me, was that old Mike Shanahan offense.
Yeah.
And I like it. It's different. It's simple. It's old school. In a way, in today's NFL, almost felt creative. Like, everyone's out here trying to get cute and trying to get crazy, and props to him. It works a lot of the time for some of these great offensive minds. Arthur Smith was really restricted in what he could do, and you guys made a great point talking about how bad the quarterback play was. But he made the most out of it, and that was the big thing. So just looking at the run game specifically, they were first in outside zone. No team ran as much outside zone as the Atlanta Falcons. 58% of their rushing attempts were in outside zone, which is wild. And the big reason for that is, you look at the right side of that line, you have Chris Lindstrom, Caleb McGarry, Parker Hesse, and of course, Keith Smith. Those four guys really made running the ball, I'm not going to say easy, but a hell of a lot easier. And if I'm not mistaken, all four of those guys were up for a contract that year, made the most of it, and then got a new deal. I can't remember if Hesse was up for a contract, but I know Lindstrom, McGarry, and Smith all were. So love to see that. Those four guys got themselves their payday. And then outside of that, 29th in inside zone with 13% of their rushing attempts, 13th in duo with 18%, tied for 13th, tied for 13th in power with 1%. And then this is something I found really interesting. They did not run a single counter run all season. They were the only team in the league to have 0% of their rushing attempts be counter, which is really interesting because a lot of teams that run outside zone, they use counter as counter punch, for lack of better terms, against boxes and defensive fronts that work well against outside zone, right? Because the team runs a lot outside zone. You shift your defense, you get them lined up a certain way to better play it, and then you hit them with counter, and it usually is pretty effective. The Falcons didn't do that. That's unheard of, and I think that's really interesting. They were also tied for 31st in draw. Again, did not run a single draw play last year. And then they were tied for 17th in pin and pull plays with 5% of their rushing attempts. So, like I said, the run game was really predicated on the right side of that offensive line, and then relying on Cordero Patterson and Tyler Algier to be dogs, and they are. And now you look at that and you say, oh, okay, we're going to add Bijan Robinson to this, who is the best running back prospect we've seen since Saquon. And it's like, holy shit, this run game is going to be from another planet. It's absurd what's about to happen. And we'll talk about that more when we get into the draft, but I'm so excited for the Falcons run game this year. Keith Smith, especially, he had a massive year, big breakout year for him. Really cemented himself as, easily a top 10 fullback. I would say he's in the top 5 conversation. I wouldn't quite put him there, but he's right outside of it. He was great. Parker Hesse really impressed me as like a blocking tight end. Caleb McGarry was someone that I love so much. I wanted him to be in a Bears uniform next year. Obviously worked out for you guys and us because you guys got McGarry. We ended up getting right. Chris Lindstrom, arguably the best guard in football right now. And that's not even getting into the left side of the offensive line. That is also very good in its own right. It's just that right side is so solid when it comes to the run game, and I love it.
I was a big fan. I was so happy to watch Caleb McGarry play the way he played after the first couple of years. It's like he was showing something and then he kind of fell off and then he played well and then he fell off, and just seeing him put a full year together. I mean, they arguably have the best right side in football. I mean, it was
absolutely.
It was just it was amazing to see. And you brought up a good, David, you brought up a point about the the counters and the draws. I think that number is going to go up this year because I know I'm probably getting a little ahead of this. I loved the addition in the draft of Matt Bergeron. I think he's going to do wonders. I think he's going to do wonders for the inside, and I think those counters and those draws, I think they're going to go up because I want to see what he does in the offensive line because I really liked him coming out of college. But yeah, it was just
you just got
I was just
Yannick Ngakoue.
Rydrell, I'm so sorry. I promise I was listening to you, but the Chicago Bears just signed Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah, I just saw that too, and I was like, wow.
Oh, that's fantastic. I'm so sorry if it sounded like I wasn't listening to you. I promise.
I was reacting too. I was like, what?
Me and Hammy gave each other the same look.
I wanted us to be in on him, to be honest with you. So, bro, y'all got a dude, man.
Yannick is awesome. Yannick's awesome.
Yannick
that's a really good pickup.
That is a really good signing.
Awesome. That's awesome, dude. I'm so happy. But back to the Falcons, because that's what we're here to talk about. I got to talk about that later, as excited as I am. I agree. I think adding Matthew Bergeron is going to be huge for the Falcons' offensive line as a whole. He's really good, but especially the run game, like you mentioned, because he's a perfect fit for this wide zone offense. Very athletic, able to get out, move in space, very nasty as a blocker. Definitely a really good pick for the Falcons, and I like that he's kicking inside. Because that means you've got at least 4 guys on your offensive line that are just straight up dogs in the run game, and you gotta love that. But jumping over to the pass game, looking at some of the numbers there, the Falcons were, as I mentioned, very much a play action heavy team. In fact, they ran more play action than any other team in the league, with 43% of their offensive snaps, passing snaps, being out of play action. They were 29th in average time to throw, meaning they had the third most time to throw with 3.07 seconds, which again, result of just running really deep bootlegs where you're running essentially all the way to the sideline before you let it rip. Tied for 7th in air yard percentage with 56.9% of their yards coming through the air. First in average depth of target, which surprised me a good bit, I'm not going to lie, with 11.1 yards per attempt. Or 11.1 yards per target, but they were tied for 27th in big time throw percentage with 2.9%. So it was a how do I want to put this? It was a team that wasn't necessarily throwing a lot of difficult passes downfield, but they were airing the ball out. They were tied for 12th in yards per attempt with 7.3, and it, like I said, very cut and dry, kind of simple offense, which is great for Ridder. If they're going to continue to do this next year, it's going to take a lot of the pressure off him, a lot of the burden off him, because he fits this well. He's got a good arm. He's athletic. He can get out and move. He can improvise a little bit if needed. So I want to ask you guys this specifically, because I don't know what it would be like to actually have a team that's like this. Like from the outside looking in, I think it's really cool to see. But from a fan perspective, the 2 guys that are watching these guys every single week, how do you feel about your offense being not simple, but this kind of very cut and dry game plan where you're not doing a lot of different things, but it works?
I like it, but then I also don't like a simple approach. I like I like it from the standpoint. It's kind of like you know what we are. You know what we're gonna do. Yeah, we may throw a little wrinkle in every so often, but we are who we are. Stop it if you can. If you can't, oh well, too bad. That's not our problem. So I mean, it's just I like it from that sense. I like it from that sense because they were able to produce and they were able to do really, really well last year with that offense. But then when it gets to like late in the game, like late third quarter, fourth quarter, is like, what do you do as a backup plan if the bread and butter isn't working? Like, where do you go from here? Like, how do you attack from there? Like late in the game when teams make adjustments and they know, hey, we got to keep them from running the ball. We got to make the quarterback beat us. It's like, what do we do from there? And I like from that standpoint, this is where Desmond Ridder comes in and kind of gives them an upgrade with his arm and his ability to improvise, with being able to, have a strong enough arm to throw, like whether it be in the pocket or on the run. I think it's better from that standpoint now because now we got to, like I said, I think this is like, honestly, this is all just revolving around Desmond Ridder and what he does as far as like his play at the quarterback position. I just think this is like, I don't know, this is definitely like a real kind of, I guess if you want to say X factor as far as like the Falcons, whether they're like a top 10 draft pick again, or if they're one of the top 4 seeds and they have a home playoff game like in the wild card round. Because I don't think they're going to be the number 1 seed, but I definitely think they're going to I definitely think they'll have a home playoff game. So I think it all just comes back to Desmond Ridder, and if he can operate this thing and make it work with his arm, I think them being a cut and dry, knowing what you're going to do style of offense, it's not going to matter to a defense being able to stop them if Desmond Ridder just comes in and he's able to operate and he's able to just let it go and be successful.
Yeah. And like I said, and I agree with you, Rydrell. I also feel the same way, and I think it just really just depends on the quarterback play and seeing how Ritter is. That cut and dry offense that if it works, it works. Like, if you're not going to be asked to do much, then like I'm fine with that. But I do think, depending on Ritter's skill sets, I think there is chance that you could be creative of it, and that's
Right.
probably something that I would like to see. And I think that also goes on to see how Ritter develops after each game. So I do think there could be a shot where I think this Falcons offense can evolve. But it just solely just depends on Desmond Ridder for me. So the cut and dry offense, like, I'm okay with it. I mean, if it works, it works. I mean, the 49ers, for example, like how they're so creative with their run game, like even with the terrible quarterback play they have, they're still managed to be one of the best teams in the league. I mean, the Falcons, like, no means am I comparing the Falcons to the 49ers, but it's like a similar situation down there. And so, obviously speaking, like if it works for the Falcons, then I'm okay with it. And I think it's fantastic. But I do think there is a chance where they can be a little bit more creative with their offense. And that just solely depends on how well does Desmond Ridder progress after each game.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say, I don't expect the Falcons to be as cut and dry next year, especially with their passing game, because of the weapons they have now, right? Like Mac Hollins is someone that I get really excited about. I know that's not a huge name, but I do think he can be a good contributor. Drake London, you're going to have Kyle Pitts not being forced into being an inline wide tight end. Like there is room. Yeah, there is room to get creative next year. You have Bijan Robinson, who can be a fantastic receiver out of the backfield, not only as like a normal running back, but he's a little bit like CMC, where you can split him out wide, put him in the slot, and he can run legitimate routes, create separation, be a mismatch against linebackers and slot corners and things like that. Like there's going to be a lot of moving pieces next year to really get creative. And if Ridder can step up, improve that he doesn't need to rely on, play action and being this cut and dry offense. And I do think the Falcons can be a really fun football team. And I think their run game, no matter what, is going to change a little bit, just because I think, like Rydrell mentioned earlier, you add Matthew Bergeron, you're going to be able to run a little bit more to the left, maybe work in some counters, things like that.
Yep.
So I'm really excited to see what this offense is going to look like next year. I think it's going to be super, super fun. And I think there's a lot to get excited about. Now, the defense, on the other hand, I'm not going to say I think it's bad, because I don't. I'm just not as excited about it. And last year, I don't think anyone was excited about the Falcons defense because it was not very good. Now, they made a lot of moves to improve it. You know, it's not going to be this bad again next year, assuming everyone stays healthy, which knock on wood, hope they do. But last year, the defense was very boxed in schematically, because truth be told, the Falcons just didn't have the guys to do what they wanted to do. And on top of that, you had AJ Terrell, who the season before, at least in my opinion, was one of the 5 best corners in football. Last year, not so much. Now, I don't think that'll happen again this year. I think he's going to take another step in the right direction and go back to being really good. But last year, Terrell wasn't fantastic. So when your best defensive player isn't playing up to where he needs to be, and you don't have the dogs in the fight to do what you want to do, your defense is going to take a step back. Just to kind of dive into starting with their secondary, talking about the type of coverages they ran. They were 16th in cover 0 with 1.6% of their snaps, 18th in cover 1 with 19.7%, 7th in cover 2 with 18.1%, 4th in cover 3 with 43.1%, which is a little bit misleading, because when we're talking about cover 3 with the Falcons here, it's not like normal cover 3. It was a lot of blitzing that came out of this cover 3. What they would do is they would run these like, what's the word for it? Fire zone blitzes, where you're sending 5, dropping 6 into coverage. You have 3 guys deep, 3 guys kind of underneath. You send 3 down linemen, and you have your 2 linebackers blitz. And the Falcons did a lot of that, especially on third down, and we'll talk about that. But that's why that cover 3 number is so high. And then they were tied for 16th in quarters with 12.3%, 29th in quarter half with 3.1% of their defensive snaps, and tied for 24th in cover 5 with 0.4% of their snaps. So like I said, this was a team that ran a lot of cover 3, a lot of cover 2. They blitzed a lot. And the big reason for that, like I said, is, or I guess not like I said, but the big reason for that, the big reason why they were blitzing so much is because it really felt like they didn't trust their guys to get home with only 4. You know, this is or only 3, I guess, in this situation. They wanted extra guys to rush at the quarterback to get to the quarterback. They didn't really trust just their linemen. And they also weren't super content with their corners and man coverage, just as a whole. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that before we jump into like the blitzing numbers, but if you do, by all means.
Well, the pass rush hasn't been good down here for years, so that number doesn't really shock me. And it's like I don't know what it is with the Falcons defense and not having a pass rush, but it's like no matter who they brought in to try to improve it, it's just like it hasn't worked. So I think some of it could be like the coaches not being able to trust the guys to get home, but I think a lot of it we just didn't, like you said, we just didn't have the dogs for it. Outside of like Grady Jarrett, who I feel is like a top, I don't know, 6'8", top 6, top 8 defensive tackle in football. I mean, you got nobody else who's really there to like who can like put pressure on the quarterback like that. I just think they didn't necessarily have the dogs for it, and I commend the front office for doing a really good job of at least trying to make an attempt to be like, okay, we recognize our weaknesses. We need to go into the offseason with a game plan. Who do we bring in that's going to help solidify what we're trying to do as a unit, as a defense? And I like the moves to get like David Onyemata, the move to get like a Caden Ellis who's a really good pass. Like they were both really good they've been really good for the Saints. So I like moves like that. Last year was just kind of like one of those things was like we didn't expect the defense to really be that good anyway. So the numbers didn't really the numbers aren't shocking because we didn't expect the defense to really be that good anyway. So the numbers weren't really shocking, but it was just more along the lines of we knew the talent outside of like a couple of players, like we just knew the talent wasn't there for that defense. So the numbers really aren't all that shocking.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like Falcons defense was just, like outside of Grady Jarrett, nothing in pass rush. Now, I do like the Arnold Ebiketie. He was kind of showing some flashes. Same with Troy Anderson. So hopefully these guys can take a step up. But yeah, This year, like some of the additions that we made, and also Dean Pease has retired as the defensive coordinator, so it's now Ryan Nielsen, who
Oh,
is
I
the
love that.
co-defensive coordinator from the Saints and also from the Dallas Allen tree. And part of his scheme is that he loves to get versatile with the front seven. So you might probably see the Falcons get very try an attempt to get creative with their front seven. So maybe you could see that pressures and and all that go up. But then again, I mean, the Falcons making an attempt, at least that's a good thing. And I'm kind of curious to see how that actually ends up working out.
Yeah, because Ryan Nielsen, like what I've noticed about his defensive scheme and what he ran in New Orleans a lot, he loves big defensive ends. He loves big defensive ends. Like you look at a dude like
Yep.
Cam Jordan. You look at a guy like Cam Jordan, who's basically a defensive tackle playing defensive end. I mean, that's just his style. He loves being able to have those big guys on the outside, being able to not only rush the quarterback, but being able to set the edge and being able to stop the run. Thus, like seeing a guy get drafted like Zach Harrison, like 6'3", 280, like he kind of fits that mold a little bit. Even though he's a rookie, he fits that mold. So I'm very interested in seeing where
Yep.
Ryan Nielsen's going. This defense, I like the scheme. I feel like this year we got the dogs and just Calais Campbell. Ugh, I loved him getting Calais
I
Campbell.
was shocked that he
I
signed
was
there. I was shocked that the Falcons got him.
I was too. I thought he was like a one-way ticket. As soon as Aaron Rodgers went to the Jets, I thought he was about to follow him like right there. And then I heard
Yeah.
the Falcons signed him, and then just hearing him talking about what they're doing down here is like, okay, for him to come to Atlanta, there's really got to be like some type of magic going on down there for him to be a veteran who at this point is really he wants to win a title. For him to come in Atlanta over going to the Jets with Aaron Rodgers, there's got to be something going on there. So it's just like I said, I want to see what Ryan Nelson's going to do with our defensive linemen, in particular our ends, and getting bigger on on that part of the line, just kind of seeing how they
Yep.
operate and how he's going to execute.
And seeing the depth chart right now, obviously running the 3-4 defense, seems like you're seeing Grady Jarrett being on the right side now, from what I'm seeing. So, like you said, so I'm probably expecting Cam Jordan type, if I'm not mistaken. So that's what I'm seeing on the depth
Yes.
chart. So that's kind of so Grady Jarrett is just Now that he's got actual guys next to him, I think it's going to be. I think we might see the Falcons pass rush make some improvements here, and obviously the Zach Harrison,
Yeah, I think if there was ever a year Grady Jarrett was going to eat, this is the year.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a massive Zach Harrison guy. He was one of my favorite players in the draft. I was really jealous when you guys got him because I wanted him to fall to Chicago. But yeah, I agree. And Hammy, that was a really good point, bringing up the new defensive coordinator, who I know you said his name. His name's escaping me. I still got Ngakoue brain. That's
Ryan
the only
Nielsen.
name I can think of. Yeah, Ryan Nielsen. Bringing up what he's bringing to the table with his more versatile defensive fronts. It's going to be really interesting because the Falcons have a lot of athletes, like middle linebacker Troy Anderson, Arnold Ebiketie, Zach Harrison can move around. Like, it's going to be exciting to see what they can do. And now all of a sudden, their front four, especially looking at the defensive ends they have, you guys mentioned Grady Jarrett. Obviously, defensive ends, defensive tackles. So Grady Jarrett, Calais Campbell. They brought in Bud Dupree, who's going to be an edge rusher for them. Like, there's a lot of moving pieces in this front seven now. And this Falcons front seven feels, deep, for lack of a better word. I was trying to think of a different way to put it, but it's a deep room. And I'm really excited to see what's going to be done there with it. But speaking of getting to the quarterback, last year, when it came to blitzing, especially on third down between the 20s, the Falcons did it a lot. Now, they didn't do it a lot on third and short, which is pretty interesting. They were tied for 21st in the league, with 26.7% of their snaps being some sort of blitz. They were 14th in the league on third and medium with 36% of snaps. Then they were 8th in the league on third and long with 44.8% of their snaps. Like I said, it was very much, it felt like they didn't trust the guys they had to get to the quarterback naturally. They didn't trust their guys in coverage. So they just wanted to send people at the quarterback and see what they could do. They also ran a lot of stunts on third down. They were third in the league on third down stunt percentage with 54.3%, which makes sense. You don't trust your guys to beat their guy one-on-one, have them move around, do different things. And I think that number will probably stay high despite getting a new DC because of what the new DC brings to the table and the different moving parts and whatnot. So
Yeah.
I think the Falcons defense is going to be a lot more interesting this year. I'm not as excited for it as I am the offense, but I'm definitely excited to see what they're going to bring. Now, jumping into the offseason, starting out with free agency and looking at some of the guys who left, are there any free agents that left that stand out to you as someone that hurts? Whether it's somebody you think is going to hurt the team in terms of how good they were, what their impact was last year, or a player that you were just a big fan of that you're sad to see go?
I'll let you go, Hammy.
I can't remember honestly who are the free agencies that left, if I'm going to be honest with you.
I've got a list here if you want me to read some of them off.
Yeah, you go ahead. That'll be great.
Okay. So linebacker Rashaan Evans, cornerback Casey Hayward, cornerback Isaiah Oliver, offensive tackle Isaiah Wilkinson, wide receiver Olamide Zaccheaus, quarterback Marcus Mariota, some of the lesser names guys like linebacker Nick Kwiatkowski, one of my personal favorites, interior defensive lineman Abdullah Anderson, tackle Jermaine Ifedi, wide receiver Demir Bird, safety Eric Harris, long snapper Bo Brinkley, wide receiver Emeka Emezie. I'm not sure how to say that guy's name. I suck with names. I have to say this once an episode. Hammy, you've heard me give this spiel before.
Yeah.
I pronounced Chris Olave's name Chris Olave for 4 months until TikTok yelled at me for saying it out loud. So
yeah.
Olamide
Zaccheaus, that was kind of a little surprising because he kind of did look solid when the reps that he got. So, but other than that, also Nick Kwiatkowski, your guy, that was also another that I was a little bit kind
to
of
be
surprised.
fair, he's not that great.
Yeah.
He's fallen a long way from the 1 year in Chicago where I thought he was the next Brian Urlacher. Back before I understood how to evaluate a linebacker. I just saw a white boy making plays and thought, yep, he's our savior. And I was very wrong.
And you're doing that now with Jack Sanborn. He's your savior, and he's actually really good, though.
He's a lot better than Kwiatkowski was, but no, Sanborn is very firmly LB3. Thank you very much. Tremaine Edmonds is the second coming of Christ.
True.
We ignore anything I said about him prior to this offseason ever because I was not a Tremaine Edmonds fan until this past season.
I know.
But we'll roll with it. I'm more of a TJ Edwards guy anyways, but that's neither here nor there.
Edwards is really good. Edwards is good. But yeah, Olamide Zaccheaus was kind of the surprising one that left because he actually looked solid when he was on the field and he was kind of making some plays, but seeing what we replaced him with, I feel like it kind of got a little bit better, but Zaccheaus kind of does hurt a little bit because he was producing when nobody was expecting him to.
Sure.
For me, probably Isaiah Oliver and his versatility in the secondary to be able to play the slot corner, and then also at times to be able to play a safety role with the physicality he brings. I think he's the one for me that stands out as probably the one that could potentially hurt. But honestly, losing him and then bringing in like a Jeff Okudah, I think that's probably where you can kind of see, okay, did they do okay, is Jeff Okudah going to be the guy? Is he going to be the number 2? Is he going to be the guy? So for me, Isaiah Oliver is the one that stands out as the one that could potentially hurt because he was very versatile. He was when the Falcons realized he couldn't be like an outside guy, and then they moved into the slot, and then a light bulb went off. It was just like, yeah, it was like watching. Yeah, he was like really good at what he did. So yeah, just his versatility, I think, is what could go to potentially hurt as far as losing a guy. So for me, it's Isaiah Oliver.
But looking at some of the free agents that left, I do think it's also pretty, not ironic, but funny to me as a Bears fan to see some of the names that left because they were the Ryan Poles rehabilitation projects. Or I'm sorry, not Ryan Poles, Ryan Pace. I've blocked Ryan Pace so far out of my mind that Ryan Poles is the only Ryan I know. But Ryan Pace, his little rehabilitation projects, guys like Elijah Wilkinson, Nick Kwiatkowski, where are the other ones? Abdullah Anderson, Jermaine Ifedi, Demir Bird, even Michael Pruitt was in with that. Of course, you guys brought him back because he actually worked out. But a lot of his rehabilitation projects that came over from Chicago are on the way out. And I just want to throw that out there because it shows just how bad Ryan Poles is, or Ryan Pace. God damn it. Ryan Poles is great. It shows how bad Ryan Pace is at the whole team building thing. Like I said, I am so far beyond that man's existence that the only Ryan in my brain right now is Ryan Poles. That's the only Ryan I care about is Ryan Poles. Ryan Pace.
As you should.
He exists. But anyways,
as you should.
Moving off of that, and talking about guys that you brought back, I already alluded to a couple of them, but some big names here, obviously. Keith Smith, who, like I said, fullback, love the guy, had a big breakout season. I know he's one of Hammy's favorites. Parker Hesse, one of the better like H-backs in the league, played a little bit of fullback last year. I like what he has to bring to the table as a blocker. Caleb McGarry and Chris Lindstrom, two best linemen on the team probably at this point. Lorenzo Carter coming off the edge. Then a couple other guys, Mike Vrabel's son, Tyler Vrabel, long snapper, Liam McCullough, cornerback, Cornell Armstrong, wide receiver, Kadero Hodge, and punter, Bradley Pinion. Out of those guys, is there anyone that you guys want to talk about? I know we kind of covered most of them, but any of the other guys that maybe didn't get any airtime, if there's something you want to talk about, go for it.
I'm just so glad Lindstrom is on this team because holy moly, if that man was not on that roster, I probably would be scared for this Falcons right side of the offensive line without him. And literally, Chris Lindstrom is probably the best player on that team. We could not afford any sort of reasons to lose him. So having that man back, it's actually awesome. I love me some Chris Lindstrom. But yeah, that's just me.
No. On it, no. I can't agree with you more. Just he was like priority number one. You had to lock up if you're at the Falcons front office. Like the way that man has played is just. I knew he was good coming out of college. I didn't realize he was going to be like this good. Like the man is insane, and just we had to lock him up. He was like priority number one. If we let him go, man, I'd have been pissed. If we let him go.
I mean,
He's probably in Chicago right now, for being totally honest, but that's
probably.
I feel like Chicago would have gotten either him or McGarry had either one of them left. I feel they would have gotten one of them. They really would.
Yeah, it's Chicago runs a similar. Chicago has a similar run game, similar run scheme. Excuse me. Splits are a little bit different, but same base and whatnot. Neither one of them would have fit well, but they're Falcons. They belong in Atlanta. I'm happy with Chicago did. I'm not salty. I just had to throw that out there. I got to bring up the Bears wherever I can. It just happens. It's instinctual at this point. Jumping over to some of the free agent. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Hammy. Want to say something?
Oh no, I was gonna praise Keith Smith because the leap that man took. I am so happy, and I'm praying that Clint Rakovich is going to make this team because I also want to see this man get creative as well. But then again, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I really would like to see Clint get a shot in the league, and hopefully the Falcons would be the team to do so.
I love the Rat Dog. He's my favorite college player ever. But I don't see him sticking around in Atlanta because of how good Keith Smith is. However, I do think if he gets cut, if he had a good training camp, which I haven't been following the Falcons through training camp, if I'm being totally honest. But if he's performing well, I do think another team would be making a fantastic decision to go pick him up. I just want him to get a chance, man. I'm with you. I love him. He's my favorite college player ever. He was great to talk to him when I got to him, my old podcast. Like, he's the man. But jumping over to players you guys added this offseason, who are you most excited to see out of the additions?
Jesse Bates. Enough said.
That was me.
Fair.
It's not even close. It's Jesse Bates. We literally added the best safety in football. Jesse Bates, man. Oh my gosh. Like That man is so good. That man is so good, and it was almost like it was destined for him to go to Atlanta because it was like Falcons fans started talking about it last year, knowing his contract was going to be up. Are we going to get Jesse Bates? And then the video he did with AJ Terrell and Kyle Pitts, the IG video where they were like hanging out at a party, whatever, they were eating and whatnot. And I'm like, the Falcons are really going to mess around and sign this dude. And then they messed around and signed this dude. And I'm just like, how did we get Jesse Bates, man? Like, just
I was shocked.
Just how?
I was shocked.
He is
because
out of all the free agents, he is easily the one I'm most excited for. Just to see what he's going to bring is easily Jesse Bates.
Yeah, he brings the versatility with that secondary, so that is pretty exciting. I'm going to shift a little bit of gears, and though I am very, very excited to see Jesse Bates in a Falcons uniform, David Onyemata is another signing that I was really, really a fan of. Solid player, solid tackle, obviously one of the Ryan Nielsen guys, and obviously a guy that's very familiar with the system that Ryan Nielsen likes to run. Onyemata is very solid, and I do think that giving somebody in that defensive line that is already experienced alongside with Grady Jarrett and for him and Zach Harrison, Arnold Ebiketie, like I think this could be really, really good. So Onyemata, I think, was a very solid pickup. And so I do think that having that alongside with Grady Jarrett, I think is just only going to be pretty fantastic to see what this front seven can end up doing next season. So the fact that Onyemata, a 6 signing that's already familiar with the system, you pair that up with Grady Jarrett, I think great things are going to happen with Grady Jarrett. So that's another signing, but outside the Bates signing, obviously, and extending Chris Lindstrom and keeping Keith Smith, Onyemata was the guy that, I actually like to see that I was really impressed that the Falcons got.
I'm just ready to see that Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett, Taquan Graham defensive line rotation. That's what I'm ready to see, to be honest with you.
Oh my God. Listen, those 4, and then you have Zach Harrison coming off the edge with how fucking big he is. And then you get a little bit of speed with Arnold Ebiketie and then Bud Dupree in there as well. Defensive line is quietly nasty. Like it is very quietly scary. Absolutely.
And we ain't even mentioned D'Angelo Malone, who's been improved, who's been getting better too.
Yeah,
for sure.
And
too. Lorenzo Carter, who got brought back.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
that's
a good group,
and I was happy with
really
that.
Good group.
That for the first 10 years, I can say our like D ends and our edge players, we got a badass group. I can honestly say that for once. We do.
And like I like the Falcons because they don't have like that true dog at edge, right? Like they don't have somebody who's like the true alpha, the Batman to somebody's Robin. But you got an amalgamation of a bunch of different guys who do different things well and complement each other well. And I think that's so fun.
Yep.
I love defensive lines that are like that. And then obviously your dogs, your Batman, so to speak, are in the interior with Grady Jarrett and Calais Campbell and David Onyemata to a slightly lesser extent, but he's still very good. The move that I'm most excited for you guys, and it goes back to my roots, is Jonnu Smith, just because I love me a good blocking tight end. And the way he's going to free up Kyle Pitts is going to be awesome. I mean, I already talked about it. You get the gist of it. I'm excited to see what he's going to do. And also Mac Hollins. I'm a UNC fan. He's one of my guys. I'm sure you two saw the clip of him at training camp where he mossed Jeff Okuda and looked like a fucking linebacker.
He's gigantic.
He's massive.
Huge. I realize that guy doing big. He is huge.
Yeah. He is sneaky massive.
He is sneaky huge, bro.
Like there's a lot of big fucking dudes on this offense. And I'm really excited to see what's going to happen with him. Like Mac Hollins is a perfect fit for this type of offense, for somebody who can just get downfield on play action.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Don't get me started. I'm so excited to see what Arthur Smith's going to do with him. And with all these moving pieces, like I've already said it, this Falcons offense quietly is going to be one of the most fun teams to watch. In my opinion, it is must-see TV. The Atlanta Falcons right now, in the year of our Lord 2023, are must-see television. And I can say that confidently. I don't know when the last time you could say that confidently about the Falcons was, but it is absolutely true right now.
Yeah, I think since at least like
Probably 2016.
probably 26. Yeah, probably 2016, like the Super Bowl year. This is probably like the most confidence we probably since the Super Bowl year.
Yeah,
it's like always been their moniker, getting these big wide receivers and these big weapons. So yeah, that's insane, man. It's insane.
yeah, for sure. But looking at some of the other names that got brought in by Atlanta, a couple corners here with Jeff Okudah and Mike Hughes. A solid depth in that room for sure. Maybe you can unlock something with Jeff Okudah. A change of scenery can be great for a dude. He's a former top 5 pick. Gave up what, 6th, 7th round pick? I can't remember which one. It was a late pick. Or was it higher than that? I don't know.
I think
it was a 5th round pick we gave up.
I think it was a 5th.
Oh, really? Okay. Either way, day 3 pick, former top 5 pick. A fun corner, could potentially be something there. Calais Campbell, David Onyemata, we've talked about them. Bud Dupree, talked about him, good edge depth. Jesse Bates, obviously. I don't quite agree with the best safety in the league take, although I do respect it. If he was on my team, I'd probably be saying the same thing, so I don't blame you. I lean a little more towards Kevin Byard or Derwin James myself, but he's definitely up there. Top 5 safety at the very least. He's awesome. Jesse Bates is incredible.
Yeah.
Big difference maker for this
he's
defense.
top 5.
Yeah, he's definitely top 5.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Scotty Miller got brought in, just another fun, speedy guy. Taylor Heineke, good QB2, brought him up earlier. If things don't go well with Ritter, he can at least plug in. Caden Ellis, good blitzing linebacker, knows the defense. And then some of these other names, just kind of the extras, so to speak. Ethan Greenidge, offensive tackle, wide receiver Penny Hart, linebacker Andre Smith, cornerback Breon Borders, who I just found out today apparently was most recently on the Bears. Didn't know that. I don't know how I missed that. I'm usually pretty good at keeping up with that kind of stuff, but he was on the Bears at some point. Cornerback Trey Flowers, linebacker Tay Davis, offensive tackle Joshua Miles, and interior defensive lineman Joe Gaziano, I think is how you say that. Again, suck with names. But overall, quietly, again, really good free agency haul, if you ask me. Like, sure, some of these names might not be super flashy, but they work well for this team and they're going to make a pretty solid impact. Like, outside of Calais Campbell and Jesse Bates, if you're a casual NFL fan, you're probably not paying too much attention to what the Falcons brought in. But I'm very excited to see what they're going to be doing.
I think what the Falcons got in the haul, like, I think that was pretty insane. And I feel like I think a lot of these signings are 1-year signings. So it's like, I'm not sure I don't think they're going to be long-term guys, but more so impact guys are going to make an impact right away. Plus also helping the young guys develop, because Zach Harrison's there, big edge that even I also liked. Now he's behind Calais Campbell on the depth chart, and Arnold Ebiketti's behind Bud Dupree. Obviously, there's some stuff that you can learn from them, and so if that helps to their development, I think that's just going to be fantastic. And I'm like later on. So just having like that free agency class and having that veterans and experience, and I think it's going to be awesome. So yeah, that free agency class, I was really impressed with what they did.
Anyways, just moving off of free agency into the NFL draft. Not a huge class for the Falcons, but I would say one that's going to be pretty impactful. I like quite a few of their picks. So just off the bat, what was your favorite pick the Falcons made?
I'm not going to say Bijan Robinson, even though it's the flashy pick.
I'm trying to.
I'm not going to say Bijan Robinson. I'm going to say Clark Phillips III.
I like it.
That's who I was going to go with.
Out of Utah. Like, dude, to me, he literally has he had first round talent to me. And to get him where they did, I think 3rd round, was it 3rd or was it 2nd? Was it 3rd round?
4th, actually.
Yeah. 4th,
I think it was a 3rd round pick. Or
it was a 4th round. Pick 113.
Yeah, 113, 4th round. Just that value for a player of his talent was just, I don't know. I when I heard they drafted him, I was like, dude, you literally got a college defensive player of the year in the 4th round. Like, just that was amazing. My favorite, because I really feel he can be like, he's instantly like your starting slot corner, I think, off the jump. So, and ultimately,
Yeah.
if he continues to develop, he can be your number 2 with AJ if he continues to develop. So I like
Yeah.
Clark. It's Clark Phillips the third for me, just for the upward trajectory that I really feel like he has as far as his potential. For me, it's him.
Yeah, I'm with you because I also was going to say Clark Phillips. That was a pick that I was so impressed that the Falcons got. And if Akuda doesn't work out, you can plug Phillips in, or maybe something creative could happen. But Phillips was just intriguing, and getting him that late, who I thought was going to go day 2, that was just actually incredible. Um, Another pick that I kind of liked was obviously the Zach Harrison pick because Falcons needed the pass rush help. Just keep investing in the pass rush as how critical it is and how integral it is to today's NFL, especially for your defense. Zach Harrison being a sick acquisition, and like I think that's just fantastic. So yeah, like obviously besides Bijan Robinson, who was my favorite player in this draft, but outside of him, I'm obviously going to go with the 2 guys that we got on the defense, and I think they're going to be immediate impacts when they get their shot on the field.
I most definitely agree with that right there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Starting out with Clark Phillips, just to talk about him for a moment. I agree that he had like borderline 1st round talent. The only reason he fell as far as he did is because of off the field stuff.
Right.
And in a good way. In a good way. I'm not saying he's like out there doing the bad things. It's
Right.
he didn't test super well. There's concerns about his size. Things like that. And like, sure, that's valid. But as a nickel corner, this guy who on tape was almost flawless. Fantastic value in the 4th round. Quick feet, fluid hips, good ball skills. He's tough. He's instinctive. He's aggressive, super physical guy, high football IQ, good reaction time. Like as a nickel, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. I'm really excited to see what he's going to do. And then Zach Harrison, like I mentioned early on, was one of my favorite players in the class. He's just this hulking behemoth of a human. Like the only issue with him is he's kind of a linear athlete. Like he's not the bendiest or twitchiest or loop around the offensive line type of guy, but he doesn't have to be because he gets his hands on you. He's one of those guys that as soon as he fires off the ball, he snaps, he locks in, and he disengages quick. His ability to stack and shed, fantastic. I really like him as a run defender. His length is incredible. He's got super, super long arms. His frame as a whole is massive. He's a solid athlete outside of that linear ability. Like his first step's quick. He times the snap well to get off pretty quickly. He's quick running forward, so you don't have to worry about anything like that. It's not like he's slow. It's just he's not a side-to-side type of guy. He's like lateral agility is pretty lacking. He can win inside. He can win outside. He's got really good eye discipline against the run. He's got good balance. He's always moving his hands. Like I love him. I love what he brings to the table. Matthew Bergeron, we already talked about. Just a good zone blocker, going to fit really well in this offensive line.
Right.
Bijan, I know a lot of people why are you taking a running back in the top 10? I've been thinking about running backs a lot, right? And I'm bringing this up because it applies to Bijan in a good way. I know I just said his name 2 different ways. I always fuck up how to pronounce his name. But the NFL obviously is having a problem with running backs where these running backs want to get paid and they're not getting paid, and everyone's trying to figure out why. And the conclusion that a lot of people, including myself, have kind of clung to is it's a passing league. So teams don't want to pay running backs. And that makes sense. Absolutely, it makes sense. But something else I feel like not a lot of people are talking about is, objectively speaking, running backs now just aren't as talented as they used to be, right? You bring a guy like, I don't want to go too extreme with it, but like LaDainian Tomlinson, right? If there was a guy like that in the NFL, he'd be used. He'd be paid. Guy like Emmitt Smith, he'd be used. He'd be paid. The truth of the matter is we don't have, but Christian McCaffrey's a little bit different. I'll talk about that in a moment.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of like superstar complete running backs in the league. The closest thing we have to that is Saquon. And as much as I love him, he has injury concerns. So I understand why the Giants are a little more hesitant to pay him. But outside of that, the other two like elite running backs we have, granted, they're not as complete as Saquon, in my opinion, are Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb. And the reason I say they're not as complete is because I think Saquon's a lot better in the pass game. Those two are fine, but they're nothing to write home about. You're not doing much more than putting them on a flat or running a screen with them. They're runners. They are dominant runners. And those two did get paid because Derrick Henry is one of the I don't know if I want to say one of the all-time greats yet, but he's one of the best we've seen in our lifetimes. And is certainly on track to be one of the all-time greats. Nick Chubb, in my opinion, is the most talented back in football. Outside of those two, there's a reason why these guys aren't getting paid. Love Jonathan Taylor to death. He hasn't had the consistent production to warrant a contract like that. Plus, Jim Irsay's a dick. That's a whole other thing. And then you look at Christian McCaffrey. He's not a complete back either because he's not like an elite runner. Now, he's different because he's a fantastic pass catcher. So he's going to get paid based off his receiving ability. But we haven't had like that true dominant, complete running back in a long time. In walks Bijan Robinson from Texas, and one is in the league. Bijan is exactly the type of running back that would get a second contract because he is complete.
Absolutely.
Say what you want about him not having a second gear. He doesn't need it. You don't have to have a second gear to be an elite running back. Plenty of guys have done it without it. Emmitt Smith, the all-time leading rusher. He did not have a second gear. He was tough as nails, didn't miss games, and was consistent. That's a great running back. Bijan Robinson, tough as nails, consistent, plus he can run routes like a receiver. He can create separation. He can be a mismatch in the pass game. Great vision, fantastic blocker. Like, I think, and I know that I'm not going to say more running backs should be like Bijan because that's asking every running back to be a borderline blue chip prospect or to be a blue chip prospect, rather. But a big reason I feel like, again, a lot of people aren't acknowledging or noticing when it comes to these running backs is there's just not a lot of guys that are superstars like that anymore. A lot of the running backs in the league that are good 15, 20 years ago wouldn't have been like a top 10 guy. Like I'm trying to think of a good example. Like I don't know. I'm blanking on names right now. I'm trying to think of a good example of somebody who's consistently being good, and that's another thing. There's not like the guys like Derrick Henry in that. There's very few of them. Point I'm trying to make is this is a long. Jesus, I just hit my mic. This is a long way of me trying to say the reason running backs aren't getting paid that people aren't talking about is just because they're not nearly as good as they once were. But that doesn't necessarily apply to Bijan because I think he can exceed that. And I'm not trying to shit on running backs by any means. And I'm not saying current running backs don't deserve to get paid because they do. Right? Players get paid relative to the talent in the league. Their contracts aren't getting based on whether they're as good as LaDainian Tomlinson or Emmitt Smith or Walter Payton or anything like that. It's, are you as good as Derrick Henry? Are you as good as Nick Chubb? Are you as good as Christian McCaffrey? But the truth of the matter is a lot of guys aren't. But they should still be getting paid more than they're getting paid. Like Jonathan Taylor deserves to get paid. Saquon should have gotten more than he did. Things like that. I'm not trying to argue that they're not getting paid, but I do think it's definitely needs to be acknowledged that running back talent just isn't what it used to be. And you see that in how long these guys are in the league, the consistency of these guys, how many teams are running running backs by committee. Like that was unheard of until 10 years ago. Right. Nobody had 3-4 running backs that they consistently used. You had a bell cow, you might have a second guy. but it's, and there's a lot of reasons to point to that. It's not all just talent. Some of it is the way running backs are used. They're a lot more physically demanding nowadays and things like that. There's a billion different features or a billion different things that go into it. But the main point with all of this is it doesn't apply to Bijan because he's that fucking guy.
Right.
And that's why
he's
he was taken in the top
fantastic.
10. That's why the Falcons wanted him so bad. And that's why here in a few years, he's going to be one of the best backs in the league, and it's not going to be debatable. And why he's going to, assuming he stays healthy again, knock on wood, assuming he stays healthy, he will get a second contract, maybe a third contract, and so on and so forth, because he's fucking fantastic.
And especially with the versatility that he has, that probably will warrant a second contract. And that's also another thing that I feel like about the running back position is I don't think you're seeing I feel like running backs need to be, be more than just rushing in between the tackles and going. They need have the ability to catch passes out of the backfield. Like you're seeing Christian McCaffrey do that now. Granted, McCaffrey's an excellent receiver out of the backfield. Obviously Saquon too, though. Like you mentioned with Saquon, the injury histories are there. Jonathan Taylor should get a second contract, by the way. And he right there probably might be the perfect example of a guy that has the great vision alongside with the elite pass catching ability. Bijan has that. You could probably argue for Jahmyr Gibbs, who the Lions took in the 12th pick.
I think
he's
Gibbs
a really
is
good
a little
pass
more in
catcher,
line
and
with
he's not a bad
the
rusher either.
McCaffreys and the Ecklers of the world. I think he's kind of in terms of rushing in between McCaffrey and Eckler. Like he's not as bad as Eckler, but he's also not quite as good as McCaffrey. He's fine.
Yeah,
I agree with that
he's
statement.
right there.
But that I think that's gonna kind of be what running backs need to do, not to cut you off, but just to kind of build off what you were saying. The thing for running backs is going to be that you can't pick a side. Eventually, you're going to have to get to a point where you can do both. Because the truth of the matter is these hulking power backs, as much as I love them, they're just not what teams are looking for anymore. And because of that, a lot of people are, they want to be these more shifty, smaller backs. And that's also only going to work so much. So you got to find a balance. And I think a healthy Saquon Barkley is the prototype of that type of running back, the ideal modern NFL running back.
Yeah.
And
100%.
A healthy Saquon Barkley is like a slightly better Bijan Robinson. So it's just kind of the prime archetype of what you want in a modern running back. So I think Bijan hopefully starts to inspire movement. I hope this is what happens with more running backs, because I've seen a lot of people talking about stop your kids from playing running back in Pee-wee, stop them from playing running back.
I heard that. I'm like,
don't stop them from playing running back. Teach them how to run a route. Teach them how to catch a football. That's what they need to learn. They need to have that mix.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting to follow.
Yeah.
The whole point here of this whole ramble, Bijan good. That is the point here. Bijan very good.
Extreme.
Win game.
I like yeah, exactly. And I think I think Bijan Robinson could be one of those dudes like you said, he's like the total package. He just has everything that you want, and like you said, the modern day running back. He's one of those guys. I really feel he could be one of those guys who's like, okay, 1 week he can give you like 22 for $130 and maybe like a couple of touchdowns, and then the next week he may give you like 3 carries, but he can line up and give you like 6-7 catches for like 80 yards and a touchdown. It's just like it's just
right.
He's another chess piece for that offense. Exactly.
And I remember like the draft and like everybody was talking about like who the Falcons going to take. I wasn't on board with him first because I was solely like, okay, defense. I was like, it's Jalen Carter at 8 or I don't care. That's how it was at first. But then I guess things kind of started falling into place a little bit, and then people started talking. And he started hearing the rumbles about Bijan Robinson going to Atlanta more. And then I got to thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of understanding it more because I mean, you want Desmond Ridder to be your guy, and you want all the weapons you can possibly get around him to make this offense work. So you know what? If you draft Bijan Robinson, now I'm not gonna be mad at it. And then they draft him, and then the offseason, and you've seen the progress that he's making, and you just see him cook every single person they put in front of him. It's just like, yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, we did not go wrong drafting him at 8 at all. He's going to be, I think he should be everybody's early pick, offensive rookie of the year. I just think he's gonna do so many good things for us this year. I really do.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. Hammy had to step away for some connection issues real quick. He'll be back. But in the meantime, looking at the rest of this draft class, names we haven't talked about here, safety DeMarco Helms out of Alabama got him in the 7th round, and he's just stereotypical box safety, good instincts, quick trigger, physical dude, somebody that if you put him in the box, put him essentially at linebacker, he's going to cook. He's going to make plays. If you try to put him in coverage or as a deep safety, he is going to be a straight up liability. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Falcons do with him. Probably just going to be a special teamer right away. Maybe can develop into more of a Jamal Adams-esque box safety down the line. And then Joe Von Wynn out of South Carolina, just another good scheme fit offensive lineman, nothing crazy there. But overall, despite only having 6 picks or so, Falcons, I think, did pretty good. Really excited to see what some of these rookies are going to do. You're going to have some guys that are going to make a day one impact, and then a couple guys who, maybe down the line can do a little something. Like I said, I'm really, really excited for Zach Harrison, man. I love him to death. I think when you mentioned, Jesus, I got to get used to having this mic over here on my right side. I'm used to having it on my face and I can whack my hands around. Now I hit my mic and I'm making all sorts of noises. But you brought up the Saints with Cam Jordan. And I think that's a really good point to make with Zach Harrison specifically, because like you said, he's this big defensive lineman who could almost play D tackle. That's a really good run defender. And while he's not the flashiest or, somebody that's talked about as one of the best edges in football, at least not at this point in his career, he's consistent.
He has good instincts. He can get to the quarterback. Mm-hmm. He has at his size.
Yeah. He's smart, he's big, he's physical, and he's consistent. And that to me is exactly what Zach Harrison is. He is going to be the Cam Jordan of this Falcons defense. No, I'm not saying he's ever going to be, superstar prime Cam Jordan. I wouldn't be shocked if he did, but I'm not going to guarantee that or anything. But I do think he's going to play a very similar type of role for Atlanta's defense. And I'm really excited to see what that's going to be like. But while we're waiting for Hammy here, last question I have, and then I'll just ask him when he gets back.
Okay.
What are your expectations for the Falcons next year, record wise? Whether it's floor, ceiling, or an actual prediction. And then what player are you the most excited to watch next year outside of Kyle Pitts? Because I feel like that's kind of a cop-out answer.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts having a quarterback like Desmond Ridder now, I think, is a cop-out answer. So yeah, he's definitely always going to be.
I think we as a nation are excited to watch Kyle Pitts.
Exactly. Oh, facts, most definitely. Just looking at the division and seeing how it played out as far as all right. I saw this video on Twitter, a little bit before we went on, and I'm kind of look. I love LaShawn McCoy as a player, but as an analyst, sometimes I just want to choke him because some of the things he just says is he talks about the young guys in Atlanta and how there's so much to do and are they going to be able to keep their focus and all that other stuff. But yet he picks the Panthers to win a division with a rookie quarterback. I'm like, dude, you got to make it make sense, bro. Make it make sense, bro. I just feel like the Falcons have done the most to improve their team in the offseason. I'm giving them. Honestly, I'm giving them a floor of I'm giving them a 7-10 floor. I'm giving them a 12-5 ceiling. They're gonna win the division 10-7.
I think that's pretty fair. But anyways, I agree 100%. I think when you look at the Falcons, not only their division, but their schedule at large, it's
Yes.
nothing crazy. Like it's kind of mid, if we're being totally honest. The NFC South is a pretty bad division. The only teams that I think have any chance in it are the Falcons and unfortunately the Panthers. I mean, no disrespect to the Panthers. I just want the Bears to get a good pick.
I'm gonna give the Saints a decent shot, depending on what Derek Carr does with the weapons there. The reason why I do not trust the Saints is the same reason why I give them a shot is Derek Carr with those weapons, because we have to remember in Vegas he had Devontae Adams, he had Hunter Renfrow, he had Josh Jacobs, and he couldn't really do anything with them. So it's like, let's be honest. I mean, New Orleans isn't a bad team, but let's be honest. I mean, as far as offensive weapons, I mean, regardless of what they may think, he's downgrading an offensive weapon. And you're probably about to lose Alvin Kamara for at least the first 6 games of the season. So it's like, I'm kind of on board with the whole Falcons and Panthers for the NFC South. I'm definitely on board with that. But like I said,
Yeah.
I got Falcons 10-7 winning the South.
Yeah, when it comes to the Saints, I'll tell you right now, I'm a Derek Carr guy. I'm a big fan of his. I was advocating for the Bears to go out and get him before we got Justin Fields. That offseason, when every quarterback that could potentially lead their team was getting thrown into the Bears conversations, I was a big Derek Carr advocate. But that being said, 2022 Derek Carr was not good. And it wasn't because of scheme. It wasn't because of the weapons around him. It was because he himself had a really bad year. His mechanics were all over the place. His footwork was bad. He didn't trust his weapons. His mind just seemed like it was somewhere else. I think he knew it was about time for him to wrap things up in Vegas. So if we see that Derek Carr again, which I don't want to bank on, but I almost feel like we will, just because I don't see why we'd see anything different unless a change of scenery really does wonders for him. If we see that Derek Carr again, I don't have a lot of faith in the Saints. The Panthers, it's riding a lot on Bryce Young. I think Bryce Young's incredible. I think he'll be good his first year, so we kind of have to see there. But as for the Falcons, I would go even further than 10 games. I could see the Falcons as a 12-win football team this year.
That's what they 12-win ceiling for me. They have a 12-win.
Oh yeah. Like I don't know. I don't want to get too crazy, but like I said, I'm really high on the Falcons. It all rides on Ritter. Again, that's the big thing. It all rides on Ritter. So 10, 11, 12 wins, I think is very reasonable to predict. But Hammy, what are your thoughts for a record prediction for the Falcons?
I actually did my Falcons record prediction yesterday on TikTok. And I said 10-7 will probably be what I expect them, but the ceiling would be 12 wins for them. And looking at that schedule, there are some games where the Falcons could win and they could lose, and that does depend on Desmond Ritter's play. But I'm saying 10 wins because, number one, Arthur Smith's a genius. The addition of Jonnu Smith being on this team is going to free Kyle Pitts up even more. You're taking the blocking aspect out of his responsibilities and just getting creative with the run game. I mean, Desmond Ritter has been set up really well. He's got a much better receiving weapons than he did last year. Matt Collins and Scotty Millers are improvements to what the receiving core was last year. Drake London's really good. And then Kyle Pitts, who is just a behemoth of a tight end, who I really enjoy just watching playing football a lot of times. I do think he will have a bounce back campaign, which I probably will bank on that he will. And then not just mentioning the offensive line is actually really good. That might be a top 10 unit in the league, not even mentioning how incredible the run game is. And not just you have Bijan Robinson in that backfield. Algier just rushed for 1,000 yards his rookie year, and that's a 5th-round pick.
And Cordy P.
And Cordy P is still in that backfield as well. So, like, you can get creative with that run game, and, like, you could see the Falcons probably put Bijan taking snaps at the slot and have Algier run at that backfield. I mean, this offense
could be one of the more creative offenses that we will see in the league. And I feel like the people are just like writing off the notion because of the quarterback play in Atlanta. But when you look at the roster and the free agency that the Falcons did, they blew pretty much the entire NFC South out of the water. Now, respect to the Panthers for what they did, and I do think the Panthers are going to be a much improved team that they were last year, and I do think they could make a run at it for the division too, and that might be the team that I think is going to challenge the Falcons for the division. But but seeing what the Falcons did on the offseason, the fact that they did it better than what Carolina has done, I think it's more optimism that I think the Falcons are going to take this division. The Saints, like Derek Carr is preventing the Saints from being the worst team in the division. And also like they got solid pieces on that roster too. Chris Olave is really good. Obviously, I do think Carr is good, but like David mentioned, if Carr continues this level of bad play like he did last year, it's really going to hurt the Saints. But even if Carr does play like that, I don't think the Saints are going to be the worst team in that division because they still have some solid pieces on that roster. Now, obviously, Alvin Kamara is probably going to get suspended, which, I mean, it could affect them. But then again, Kendry Miller is really good, and I do love watching Kendry Miller's film on tape.
And they have Jamal Williams.
And Jamal Williams is a heck of a bruiser as well, so it's always fun to have that. But their defense, the Saints defense, like I feel like they have a ton of name value, except for guys like Demario Davis. Marshawn Lattimore is still good, and Cam Jordan is still still kicking it at this age that he's in right now. But
don't just skip over Pete Werner. Respect Pete Werner.
Pete Werner's also good, so I almost forgot about him. Pete Werner's really good, so the Saints have some pieces, but it's just that I don't know what to expect from them because like their defensive line's not good. Brian Bresee. Now they did sign who was that D tackle they got from the Chiefs?
Was Saunders on the Chiefs? Yeah.
Saunders. There you go. That's it. So they added him, and obviously Bresee is more of an upside guy, but Saints D line. I mean, the Saints are just a bunch of guys that they're guys that are way past their prime now. Pete Warner is actually great, and then Demario Davis is still kicking in. He's awesome. Same with Lattimore, but I don't trust the Saints defense. And then the Buccaneers, like, if there's one thing that I could have some optimism with the Buccaneers is that Todd Bowles loves his defensive line, and he's really great with his defensive pressure. So that's good for Tampa. But others outside of their roster, like Evans and Godwin, are still good.
Listen, to put it bluntly, they got Baker at quarterback,
and that's really all you need to know.
Yeah,
like what's holding Tampa back. So, and if if Baker's the one that's like winning the starting job, then like it pretty much tells you how they feel about Kyle Trask. So really, like I don't see a scenario like where the Falcons end up finishing last in that division. It's not happening. Like I genuinely believe that the worst I can see the Falcons finish, maybe third, just because the Saints have the quarterback advantage. But then again, I think the Falcons winning the division is probably the hill that I will ride on, and I will die on that hill. So I think 10 to 12 wins, Falcons take that division. And I wouldn't be shocked if somehow, some way, if they get lucky with who they end up playing in the postseason, they could probably win a playoff game. And I wouldn't be shocked if they did that too.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
Real quick, Hammy, this is a two-parter question. You missed me getting that, or you missed me asking it.
But
outside of Kyle Pitts, who are you most excited to watch this season?
Drake London.
Kyle Pitts. Okay, fair.
Yeah,
I was gonna say because Kyle Pitts is like the easy answer. I told Rydrell the whole nation's excited to watch Kyle Pitts. There's got to be someone else for the Falcons.
I also give one more on the defensive line. Like I said, David Onyemata is also a guy that I'm actually looking forward to, just because seeing somebody alongside with Grady Jarrett, I think will take a lot of pressure off of Grady Jarrett, and Grady Jarrett's going to eat. So if you want to get an answer for both offensive side and the defensive side, I'm curious. I'm excited for Drake London to see how he ends up doing in year 2, because he also looked better when Desmond Ridder was on the field alongside with Kyle Pitts. And then obviously David Onyemata, and well, I don't want to give the basic answer with Jesse Bates, but just the defensive line and the pass rush, like, and just seeing the young guys develop, I think that's something that I'm really excited to see what the Falcons do. So if Grady Jarrett's free, I think it's going to be fantastic to watch.
I don't think I gave you for that two-parter. And offense, I don't think I gave you a true answer for that because I went straight into the prediction. Okay, but yeah, okay. So yeah, as far as the offensive side of the ball, honestly, I'm not I want to see what Tyler Algier does. I'm excited to see what he does because it's like everybody's so focused on Bijan Robinson, and is that really so? I mean, Tyler Algier. I mean, I knew coming out of BYU, he was a hard runner. He was really good between the tackles. I think something as the year progressed that he started to show that a lot of people weren't talking about. It was his ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. I mean, he was a really underrated wide receiver coming out of the backfield, and I think he really showed that. And I just think with him, if they want to run them both in the backfield, I think you kind of sneaky have two receiving threats in the backfield to go along with what you have on the outside. So honestly, I'm really excited to see Tyler Algier, and I want to see where he fits. You know, being, I guess you want to call him the Thunder to Bijan Robinson's Lightning, to kind of see where it goes. Right. But
Yeah.
as far as the defensive side of the ball, I'm a Richie Grant guy. I've been a Richie Grant guy for a while, and I want to see what this signing of Jesse Bates, letting him be that center field guy, that quarterback of the secondary, like controlling everything. I want to see how this opens up Richie Grant, because Richie Grant, say what you want about the secondary last year, Richie Grant was good for them last year, and he was good last year. Like his tackling, his ball skills, like being able to diagnose run plays. He was good last year, and seeing him, and I'm intrigued seeing him in a true, like, I guess you want to say, I guess he'll be he should be the strong safety for the Falcons.
He is. Jesse Bates the front.
Yeah, Jesse Bates is the free. So kind of like seeing
free, my bad.
Right. So kind of seeing what they're gonna do with him, and how Jesse Bates is gonna open up things for him, and just I want to see what he does in a more kind of, I guess, having more of a versatility type role in the defense this year. I want to see what he does. So yeah, if I had to pick one from each side, I would probably go Tyler Algier from the offense, and I'll go Richie Grant from the defense.
So underrated picks. Yeah. Also, shout out Troy Anderson. I'm really excited to see if he takes that leap next season, because he showed a lot of flashes last season, and I especially remember that Rams game. I think it was the second game of the season, and I think Troy Anderson made like a really critical tackle, and I was just like starting my entire excitement with Troy Anderson. I was like, oh, Falcons probably got a steal in that guy. So Troy Anderson, like, if he can take the next step, I think he's going to be incredible, because the athleticism that this guy has is just unreal.
Oh yeah, Troy
for sure.
Troy Anderson is definitely a good pick. I feel like if he develops and turns into what I feel he can be too, I think the front seven, if he really takes strides, is going to be so. They're gonna have a really scary front seven. If
that front seven has some insane upside.
And it's him and another guy, because he kind of took a step back for me last year, Michael Walker. I want to see if he can kind of get back to what he was doing like a couple of years ago, before the spotlight was really kind of thrusted on him to kind of really take that step. People were calling him like a breakout player, and he kind of took a step back. I want to see if Troy Anderson and Michael Walker can really kind of develop and become a real solid 1-2 punch at linebacker. The sky's the limit for that front seven.
It'll be much better than seeing Deion Jones play linebacker.
Oh God, bless the Panthers. Bless the Panthers. I don't. Oh gosh.
They signed him?
They signed him.
Yeah.
Yes, they
I
did.
missed that completely.
Carolina signed him. Yes, they did.
Dude, I remember when the Falcons traded him, Browns fans were trying to tell me about his PFF coverage grade. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Deion Jones got bad quick.
He's not good anymore. Like, I think we're still living off the 2016 season.
This is not 2016, 2017, beginning of 2018 Deion Jones. He is not that dude anymore. And if Carolina thinks they're getting that dude, they're going to get a rude awakening that first month of the season.
That's not. Yeah, that's a warning for Panthers fans.
Yeah.
Deion Jones. I would not be excited about that.
Yeah,
this is a guy that's living off of name value at this point.
Exactly. If they think they're getting that dude back, I don't know what to tell them because he is just he's not it anymore. I held out faith on him as long as I could. Just like watching him continue to get cooked, watch him continue to miss tackles. Just it was just it was bad. It was bad.
Yeah, for sure. Now just to kind of close this out here, players I'm most excited to watch for the Falcons. I've already talked about Zach Harrison in depth. I don't need to talk about him anymore. I'm just big fan. Very excited to see him play. And then on offense, obviously Keith Smith, fullback, self-explanatory there.
Oh yeah.
But I think that about he was. He took such a big step up, and I'm so happy. I love him. I can't wait to see what he does this year. And then Parker, like as an extension of him, I'm also really excited to watch Parker Hesse, just because he is like the secondary fullback, kind of like fourth tight end, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah.
But yeah, with all that being said, I think that about wraps us up. Before we head out, if you guys want to plug anything, by all means, go on ahead and do so.
Yeah. Well, you guys already know that I make content along with Miller at times. So if you guys want to follow me on HammyTakes, it's pretty much HammyTakes on all my socials. So go ahead and drop me a follow there, and you'll see me talk sports there. And it's going to be an link tree, which I will provide.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple. Yeah, obviously I have the TikTok BRF Sports. I have the link tree in the bio. Free. Big Shug 1122. All of my socials there. The IG, the Twitter. I recently just recently started the Discord, so definitely feel free to join in there and message me whenever, and I'll gladly talk sports with anyone. So yeah, basically everything's in my link tree. Big Shug 1122. Just feel free to go in and continue to show me love, and I'll keep continuing to putting this content out there.
Yep. And I'll make sure to put everybody's links in the description down below, as well as mine. You can check out my podcast, Run the North. We're an NFC North podcast, but we talk about the entirety of the league and even delve into some other sports. I'm not as knowledgeable in those other sports, I'm not going to lie, so I just kind of sit back and listen. But if you're interested in other sports, definitely a little bit of that there. And then you can find me at Miller Football everywhere: Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, obviously here on YouTube. All the links to that will be in the description down below. And I would also really appreciate if you all would subscribe. We've got more of these coming out for the month of August. I'm going to be pumping these out pretty much daily because I'm kind of behind on things. So I really got to make up for lost time and whatnot. So if you're a fan of any NFL team, really, there's going to be something for you out there. Definitely make sure to check that out. I've also got draft grades I'm doing. Haven't done the NFC South as of the time I'm recording this. Hopefully we'll have that out by the time I upload this. If not, know it's coming soon. But yeah, subscribe down below, leave a like, let us know in the comments what you think about the Falcons. Maybe you're a little bit more pessimistic about them than we are. If you are, tell us why you think so. Maybe you're in line with us. If so, tell us what you're excited to see, all that good stuff. But I think that's going to wrap things up here. So to the two gentlemen joining me here today, as well as everyone out there watching, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve